Some people mistake your resilience for an invitation to let you drown. I learned that at 31, standing outside a bank vault, holding the only thing my family couldn't destroy. My name is Claire Donovan. I'm a palliative care nurse in Portland, Maine. I've sat with more endings than most people witness in a lifetime, and on a Tuesday morning in March, I discovered that the people who raised me had spent 6 weeks trying to erase me from my grandmother's memory. They almost succeeded. What stopped them wasn't luck. It wasn't anger. It was a single photograph I'd taken on a phone they didn't know I still had, and what I did with it in the 72 hours that followed changed everything. The call came during my shift at Mercy General. My supervisor found me in the medication room. Her face had that careful blankness people wear when they're about to deliver bad news they don't fully understand. "Claire, your mother's online too. She says it's urgent." I remember noticing my hands didn't shake as I picked up. 12 years of night rotations teach your nervous system a kind of professional stillness. "Mom? Your grandmother's had a stroke." Her voice was clipped, efficient. "We're at Maine Medical. You should come." "No, how are you?" "No, I'm sorry to call you at work. Just the information, delivered like a weather report." I asked how bad it was. "Bad enough that we need to make decisions," she said. "How soon can you get here?" That phrasing stuck with me. We need to make decisions. Not she needs you. Not the doctors want to talk to family. I told her I'd be there in 20 minutes. She'd already hung up. Nana Iris had raised me as much as anyone had. When my parents, Linda and Richard, were busy building their real estate business, it was Iris who picked me up from school, who taught me to play cribbage on her sun porch, who listened when I talked about wanting to be a nurse, even though my mother thought it was settling. She was sharp, funny in a dry way that took people by surprise, and she'd lived alone in the same Cape Cod on Falmouth Street for 30 years, fiercely independent until the morning her body betrayed her. The stroke had been massive. By the time I reached the ICU, the neurologist was already talking about comfort measures, about letting her go with dignity. I stood at the foot of her bed, watching the ventilator breathe for her, and felt the specific, terrible stillness that comes before grief. My mother and my older brother, Owen, stood on the other side of the room. They weren't looking at Nana, they were looking at their phones. I asked what the plan was. Owen glanced up. "They're saying 72 hours, maybe less. We're going to move her to hospice tomorrow." I nodded. That made sense. I'd made the same recommendation to dozens of families. Then my mother said something that didn't. "We've already called someone to start clearing out the house." I looked at her. "What?" "The Falmouth property," she said, like I was being slow. "We can't just leave it sitting there, there's equity to protect." Nana Iris was still alive, still warm, still here. And my mother was already liquidating her. I didn't argue, not then. I've learned that in moments of crisis, people reveal themselves in layers. You don't always catch it in real time, you file it away, and later, when you're alone, the wrongness surfaces. That night, I sat in my apartment and thought about the house on Falmouth Street. Iris had lived there since before I was born, and I knew, because she'd told me, more than once, that she wanted me to have it, not to sell, to live in, to make a life in. She'd never put it in writing, as far as I knew, but she'd said it enough times that I'd stopped thinking of it as a wish and started thinking of it as a plan. I called my mother. "Did Nana ever update her will?" There was a pause, a small one, just long enough to feel deliberate. "I don't think so," Linda said. "Why?" "Just wondering." "Claire, don't start spinning things in your head. We'll handle the estate properly, you don't need to worry about it." That phrase again, "you don't need to worry." Translation, stay out of it. I thanked her and hung up. Then I opened my laptop and did something I'd been avoiding for years. I looked up the public record for Nana's house. The deed had been transferred. Not to me, not to Owen, not even to my mother. To a limited liability company called Dorset Holdings, registered 6 weeks earlier. The agent of record was my brother. I sat with that for a long time. Nana Iris had been healthy 6 weeks ago, sharp, still driving herself to the grocery store and beating me at cribbage every Sunday. And at some point between then and now, someone had convinced her to sign her house over to an LLC controlled by her grandson. I didn't cry, I didn't call anyone. I opened a new document and started writing down dates. Nana died 2 days later, quietly, with me holding her hand. My mother and Owen arrived an hour after. Linda cried, but it was the kind of crying that stops the moment someone asks a practical question. The funeral was small. Iris had outlived most of her friends. At the reception, held at a restaurant my mother chose, Owen pulled me aside. "We need to talk about the house." I waited. "Mom and I think the best move is to sell it quickly. The market's strong right now. We've already got a buyer interested, cash offer, close in 30 days. I asked how much. 400,000, it's fair. I asked what my share would be. He blinked. Your share? If we're selling Nana's house, I assume the estate gets divided. Owen's expression shifted. Not guilty, just careful. Claire, the house isn't part of the estate. Nana transferred it to a family trust before she passed, for tax purposes. What trust? Dorset Holdings. It's cleaner this way. No probat. I looked at him. Really looked. My brother wasn't stupid. He was a CPA. He knew exactly what he was saying, and exactly what he was hoping I wouldn't ask. So who benefits from Dorset Holdings? The family, he said. All of us. Define all of us. His jaw tightened. Mom's the primary beneficiary. I'm the manager. You'll get a share of the sale, obviously. We're not cutting you out. A share. Not half, not a third. A share, determined by people who'd already moved the asset before I even knew to look. I didn't make a scene. I thanked him for letting me know. I stayed for another 20 minutes. I hugged my mother goodbye. Then I drove to the house on Falmouth Street. It was late afternoon. The light was soft and golden, the way it always was in spring. I used the key Nana had given me years ago and let myself in. The house smelled like her, lavender sachets and old books and the faint lemon of the wood polish she used on the banister. I walked through the room slowly. The kitchen where we'd made terrible cookies, the sun porch where she'd taught me cribbage, the bedroom where I'd stayed when my parents were fighting and I needed somewhere quiet. Everything was still there, her quilts, her dishes, the little ceramic lighthouse she kept on the windowsill, the one she'd bought on a trip to Pemaquid Point. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. And that's when I saw the envelope. It was tucked behind the lighthouse, pressed flat against the window frame, old, yellowed slightly at the edges. My name was on the front in Nana's handwriting. I sat down on the floor and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, dated 3 months earlier. Claire. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm guessing things didn't go the way I hoped. I changed my will 8 weeks ago. The house is yours, not the LLC, not your mother, yours. I gave the new will to my lawyer, Alan Pritchard, and told him not to tell anyone until after I passed. I didn't tell your mother because I knew she'd fight me on it. I didn't tell Owen because he'd have tried to talk me out of it. I'm telling you now because you're the one who stayed, you're the one who listened, and I don't want you to let them take what's yours. The lighthouse is the key, you'll understand when you need to. I love you, don't let them make you small. Nana. I read it 3 times. Then I picked up my phone and called Alan Pritchard. Alan's office was in a converted house on Congress Street. He was older, semi-retired, the kind of lawyer who still used a Rolodex. He remembered me. Claire, I'm sorry about Iris, she was a hell of a woman. I told him about the letter. He nodded slowly. She said you'd come. Is there really a new will? There is, executed, witnessed, notarized. She came in 2 months ago and redid everything. What does it say? Alan opened a file cabinet and pulled out a thick envelope. He handed it to me. Read it yourself. The will was clear. The house on Falmouth Street was mine, outright, no trust, no LLC, no ambiguity. Everything else, her savings, her car, her personal effects, was to be divided between Owen and my mother. But the house, the thing they'd already transferred and were planning to sell, was mine. I looked up at Alan. The deed transfer to Dorset Holdings, is it valid? Not if she didn't have the mental capacity to execute it, and based on the timeline, I'd say she didn't. How do you prove that? Medical records, testimony from her doctor, the fact that she executed a will after the transfer that contradicts it. He leaned back in his chair. Claire, I've been doing this a long time. That LLC smells like elder abuse. The word landed like a slap. My mother wouldn't. Your mother might not have known what she was doing was abuse, Alan said gently, but taking property from a vulnerable person through undue influence, that's what the law calls it. I sat with that. What do I do? You file the will for probate, you contest the deed transfer, and you let me handle your family. I didn't tell them. Not yet. I went home and I made a list. Every conversation I could remember from the past 2 months. Every time my mother had brushed me off when I asked about Nana's plans. Every too casual mention of the house's value. The pattern was there, I just hadn't been looking for it. Then I did something I'd learned from work, I checked the metadata. Nana's phone, an old iPhone she barely used, was still sitting in a drawer at the house. I'd grabbed it on my way out, thinking I'd cancel the service. Instead, I charged it. And I went through her messages. The thread with Owen went back 3 months. Most of it was innocuous, check-ins, photos of his kids. But then, 6 weeks before she died, the tone shifted. Owen, hey Nana, talked to a lawyer friend about that tax issue you mentioned. He says the best way to avoid probate is to move the house into a family trust now. I can handle all the paperwork if you want. Nana, I don't know. That sounds complicated. Owen, it's really not, and it'll save Claire a lot of headaches down the road. You want to make things easy for her, right? There it was. He'd used my name to convince her to sign away the one thing she'd wanted me to have. I screenshotted everything. Then I found the photos. Nana had taken a picture of the deed transfer document before she signed it. I don't know why. Maybe she was confused. Maybe some part of her knew something was wrong and wanted a record. But there it was, a photo of the Dorset Holdings paperwork, dated 5 weeks earlier, with a handwritten note in the margin in Nana's shaky writing. Owen says this helps Claire. She'd believed him. And he'd lied to her. I filed the will the next morning. Alan handled it quietly, but probate filings are public record. My mother called within 3 hours. What the hell are you doing? I'd never heard her voice like that, not angry, panicked. Filing Nana's will. There is no will, Claire, we've been over this. There is. Alan Pritchard has the original. Silence. Then, that's not valid. She wasn't in her right mind. Her doctor says otherwise. It's in the file. Claire, her voice shifted, softer now, pleading, don't do this. You're going to tear this family apart over a house. You already did that, I said. You just didn't think I'd notice. I hung up. The fight happened at Owen's house. He demanded a sit-down, to clear the air. I went because I wanted to see his face. Linda was already there when I arrived, sitting at the kitchen table with her arms crossed. Owen stood by the counter, trying to look calm. This is ridiculous, he started. We're family, we don't sue each other. I'm not suing anyone, I'm filing a will. Well, that cuts us out, Linda snapped. Well, that honors what Nana wanted. She didn't know what she wanted, Owen said. She was declining. Claire, you saw it. I saw her every week. She was sharp. Sharp enough to sign away her house to an LLC she didn't understand. The room went quiet. Owen's face drained. That's different, he said finally. How? Because I was trying to help her. By lying to her? By telling her it was for me? Linda stood up. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have her phone, I said. I have the messages. I have the photo she took of the paperwork before she signed it. Owen sat down. Claire, Linda said carefully, if you push this, it's going to get ugly. It's already ugly. You just thought I wouldn't fight back. The case took 4 months. Alan was right, the deed transfer didn't hold up. Nana's doctor testified that she'd been experiencing mild cognitive decline at the time of signing, not enough to justify guardianship, but enough to raise questions about capacity for complex legal transactions. The timeline helped too. The will, executed after the transfer, directly contradicted it. And the messages, Owen's own words, made it clear she'd been misled. The court voided the transfer, the house reverted to the estate, and the will was upheld. Falmouth Street was mine. My mother didn't speak to me for 6 months. Owen sent a single email. You got what you wanted, I hope it was worth it. I didn't respond. But I did think about it. Was it worth it? I'd lost my family, or at least, the version of them I'd spent 31 years trying to believe in. But I'd kept my grandmother's house, and more than that, I'd kept the truth. I live there now. The house on Falmouth Street. I repainted the sun porch, I kept the lighthouse on the windowsill, and on Sunday afternoons, I sit in Nana's chair and play cribbage with the neighbors she used to beat. Linda came by once, last spring. She stood on the porch and asked if we could talk. I let her in. She cried, said she didn't know how things had gotten so twisted, that Owen had convinced her it was the right move, that she missed me. I listened. And when she was done, I said the thing I'd been practicing for months. I miss you too, but I'm not sorry for what I did. She nodded, wiped her eyes. I don't know how we fix this, she said. Maybe we don't, I told her. Maybe we just start over, smaller, honest. She didn't stay long, but she calls now, sometimes, careful conversations, no promises. It's not what it was. But it's real. There's a kind of strength people mistake for coldness. It's the strength that comes from sitting with someone as they die and not turning away, from writing things down even when no one's watching, from keeping a promise to someone who can't enforce it anymore. My family thought I'd let it go, that I'd choose peace over principle. They were wrong. Not because I'm vengeful, but because I've spent my whole life learning that documentation matters, that the truth, when you protect it, survives. The lighthouse was the key, just like Nana said. Not the ceramic one on the windowsill. The real one, the part of me that doesn't go dark just because everyone else stops looking. If you've ever been told you're too strong to need help, or too quiet to fight back, write this down. Your silence was never peace, it was just their comfort. And you don't owe them that anymore.